I apologize in advance if you guys can hear my neighbor's music. It's been going on all day. All day. But welcome back to another episode of Hard Pressed, you guys. My name is Aisha. And today I'm thinking I want to start a series of episodes about self awareness. I think I'm going to touch on different components I think help hone one's self awareness. And I don't know, I don't think they're going to be consecutive because I have plans to get some guests on here. And I definitely want them to talk about topics they're passionate about. I do think that doing a series on self awareness would be really awesome, really fun, really cool to dive into because I don't think it's a characteristic that everyone has, and to be quite honest, I don't know if it's something that you can gain. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. We'll find out. So all the feedback is appreciative. If these episodes that are in within this series do help you hone your self awareness skills, or help ameliorate them. Um, if you haven't liked, subscribed this podcast already, I'm going to take a pause right here. Please follow, subscribe on YouTube, follow me on Instagram. It's hardpress.podcast. So share the love, please. Um, so updates since last episode. I've started school and it's going to be challenging. It's definitely going to be challenging. If you missed the last episode, I started my master's in clinical mental health counseling. Um, and this is the second week of it. And I'm, I can't say enough how excited I am to actually start this program, and just be in school. For those all who are close to me know that I love school. I love learning. I consider myself a lifelong student. I just love gaining knowledge. I was just cheesing when I got on campus and walking around campus, walking around the buildings and just in class. I was just in such infatuation of being in a school environment. Again, I know that's so strange, but it's true. I do love school and I do love learning. The first day, which was last Tuesday, was so exciting. And then the second day of classes was Thursday last week and still exciting, but it just kind of hit me how demanding this program is going to be, which makes sense. I mean, I'm going to be helping others in their process of healing and helping them grow and be part of their journey. So I understand it takes a lot to be that support for somebody. But it's going to be challenging. I'm having a hard time trying to figure out how to balance doing this because I really want to continue this. Being a full time grad student, working part time, two jobs eventually, and being a fiance, planning a wedding, getting to the gym. This is me post gym, getting my workouts in, eating healthy. So it's gonna take a lot. It's gonna take a lot. As I'm saying it, I'm getting a little overwhelmed, but it's gonna be a lot of work. It's gonna take some planning, some sacrifices, a little less of a social life, to a certain degree. Really, a little less lounging and binge watching shows on Netflix is probably going to be the main thing I'm going to have to sacrifice, which ultimately that's a good thing. That's for the better. In terms of today's topic and in this self-awareness series, I want to talk about, I'm going to call this dealing with uncomfortable conversations. I think that really hones one's self-awareness. What I mean by uncomfortable conversations, I mean receiving feedback about whether it's at work or whether it's in your relationship, with a significant other or friendships or even just within your family. Receiving feedback that either you're not doing something right or you said something that could be hurtful to somebody unintentionally, or anything along those lines. Knowing myself, I have had such a hard time letting go of needing to explain myself when I hurt somebody's feelings. Yes, I think it's important to explain your intention or really apologize for the fact that, like, it wasn't your intention to hurt them. If this is in terms of you hurting one's feelings by something you said. It is so easy to get caught up in, no, that's not what I meant. Like, you shouldn't, like, that's not what I meant. Obviously, you didn't understand what I meant because that's not the feeling I wanted. I think letting go of that is so important, because even though the intention wasn't to hurt that person's feelings, regardless, that person's feelings were hurt. And taking responsibility for that is so, so crucial, because it allows, one, the other person to, it gives them the space to not feel bad for being hurt. Because I feel like if we don't just apologize and take ownership for it, we end up making the other person feel guilty for being hurt and feel like they can't get hurt by you saying something that actually did hurt them, or it leads to them hiding their feelings, or even it ends up them just not trusting you to express their feelings or feel safe enough to show how they truly feel. So just taking ownership of what you said and apologizing for it without telling the other person how to feel. That's so important. So I think that just saying I'm sorry, explaining your intention, I think it's important to explain where you were coming from or what your intent is, because there is usually in those situations there's a miscommunication between one's intention. I think it's important to explain your intention, but more importantly, just taking ownership for it, apologizing it, and definitely not telling the other party how they should feel about what you said, because that's really not your responsibility or your business to tell somebody they are supposed to feel. Another thing that in uncomfortable conversations, specifically another example of uncomfortable conversations, is receiving feedback in general. I think also hones, or learning how to receive feedback in general hones one's self-awareness. I had such a good example today at the gym. I was doing hang power cleans, I think it's what it's called, with the barbell. And I hadn't really done that exercise before. I was trying it out. And there was a man who, after I was done the exercise, came up to me and was telling me about the exercise. I mean, he was super kind and genuine about it. He was like, I'm no expert about this, but I feel like the way you're doing it would lead to you injuring your wrists because of how you're laying the bar. And he just gave me a tutorial, and, he was very informative, and he obviously didn't do it in a condescending manner, because I feel like it's so easy for when you get advice at the gym from someone else, especially I feel like when you're getting advice from somebody of the opposite sex, it can feel a little condescending, or that's been my experience in the past, but he was very genuine about it. It was, part of me wanted to be like, oh, no, like, I know what I'm doing. I obviously didn't know what I was doing. And in those moments, I think it's very important to humble yourself, because you may not know everything in the situation, and somebody may just be offering feedback that you have the decision whether or not you take it or not. You have complete control whether or not you take that feedback or not. But even just being open to receiving feedback is, I think, a lifelong skill to practice and get used to, because I think that's how we grow. I, at one point in time, probably couldn't take feedback without feeling like my character was being assassinated. It was it's funny how we assume like feedback is like, oh, I'm a horrible person, I must be doing everything wrong. It's so easy to feel that way, and like diving into this woe is me mindset. But ultimately, somebody's offering feedback for the most part. Either they think that something can be done better, or they think it's an opportunity for growth. And there's really nothing wrong with either of those two in general. What we can control in these situations is our thoughts and how we perceive that feedback and how we proceed with the feedback as well. So ultimately, feedback is a gift, in my opinion, and whether or not we choose to put it into practice is completely up to us. But I think just practicing the skill of taking feedback is so important. And I think in order to be able to take feedback, you have to just kind of put aside the idea that you know everything, because really no one knows everything. And approach it more of in the sense of like, I'm a student, a lifelong student. I always have something to learn. Even when you think you're a master of something, you always have something to learn or improve on. And you can always do something better in some sense. So just kind of reminding yourself that you don't know everything and that feedback is an opportunity for you to grow in whatever it is. And then letting go of the need to be right. I think that's also important when receiving feedback. That helps me receive feedback. Just knowing that it kind of goes in conjunction of like, you don't know everything, but sometimes we just have this urge to be like, oh, but I know what I'm doing. Oh, but I'm right about this when it comes to like receiving feedback. Letting go of that and just accepting like I can be wrong and I will be wrong. And I think that helps with one's self-awareness. I think another thing that can help you improve handling uncomfortable conversations is doing some reflection in those moments. I know at first having moments of reflection while the conversation is happening is very difficult. I mean, I can't, by no means am I perfect and execute these conversations perfectly each time. But this is more so coming from what I've learned in my own personal growth. But self-reflection in those moments, I think, help tremendously. Asking in those uncomfortable conversations, like, why am I uncomfortable? Why is this hard? Can I sit in the discomfort and allow, like, however the situation unfolds to unfold without having an emotional reaction and proceeding with a logical one? And if, like, let's say going back to the feedback example, if it is feedback that you believe and deem to be unnecessary or completely wrong, still giving the space to just appreciate the fact that like we all know that those conversations are uncomfortable and the person usually giving the feedback is also uncomfortable. So I think just giving the space to allow the uncomfortableness to happen also helps with your self-awareness, because it just gives you the space to just be like, all right, this is an uncomfortable situation, but I can sit with it and I can grow from this ultimately, because at the end of it, even if nothing comes of it or nothing comes of the feedback per se, you can still give yourself kudos for sitting in an uncomfortable conversation and having a logical conversation with yourself in your brain, as opposed to having an emotional reaction. So reflecting on what it is that you're feeling, why you're having, like if you are having an emotional reaction, whether it be outwardly or inwardly, why it is you're feeling that way, and just kind of talking yourself through it internally. And know that you can always pause the conversation if you feel yourself having an emotional reaction. You can always say, hey, I'm having an emotional reaction, to be quite honest, and I'm not in the space to hear this. So can we put a pin on this, or can we circle back on this at another time? You have the autonomy to do that. That's completely in your control. You don't have to sit through every conversation that's comfortable, especially when you're not in the headspace to do so. I think that is so important when it comes to self-awareness. Knowing yourself enough to say like, you know what? I'm not actually ready to have this conversation, or I'm exhausted. I am I am in an, whoo, that's a mouthful. I am in an emotional space and don't have the capacity to take on more than I'm already feeling. And nothing good will come of this conversation because I will have an emotional reaction and will say things that aren't productive. That you have complete control of that. And if somebody cares about you, they will respect that decision and you guys can have a more pleasant and meaningful conversation as long as you're able to speak up and say that. There's nothing wrong with there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying like I don't have the capacity, I don't have the strength to have this conversation at this point in time. There's nothing shameful or wrong about doing that. That I think takes more courage than anything. And that is just a component of self-awareness that makes for a meaningful conversation anyways. So know that you have the autonomy to put a hold on a conversation. In these conversations as well, I think just assuming that the person is coming from a good place makes it easier. Like we never, for example, with children, we never really assume that they're maleficent. What is the word? Malicious. Wow. We never assume that children are coming from a malicious, like they're coming from a malicious place, right? We don't really give adults that same grace. Granted, because they're obviously adults, they're more developed and everything like that. But I think even just going about and assuming that this person's coming from a kind place as opposed to character assassination, which I feel like is why some of these conversations don't go very well. I think just making the assumption that the person is coming from a kind place. That helps you receive the feedback a lot better. And know that if you can't make that assumption, instead of going to assuming that they're coming from a malicious place, maybe approach it with curiosity instead. You have the autonomy to ask questions in conversations, especially when you feel like, especially when you're unsure what that person meant by it. For example, like I know in conversations with my fiance, we've had conversations. I think anybody in a relationship has had uncomfortable conversations. But there are times where I feel like he'll say something, or even when I say something to him, that can be taken in a negative way. And if we need clarification, because we both know that we're not there to put each other down, that's not the point of this relationship. We're there to help each other grow and keep each other accountable and lift each other up. So if there comes to something, if something is said and you have to ask, if you question like, whoa, that doesn't sound right, or that's actually pretty hurtful, ask more questions. What did you mean when you said this? Is this what you meant by this? Because this is how I'm taking it. I'm feeling right now that you're saying that this. Ask more questions. Be curious and get more clarification if you're unsure, as opposed to assuming this person is there to put you down or hurt your feelings intentionally. To me, when somebody is doing that, not asking questions, I feel like in that moment, you're choosing to assume malintent. You're choosing to take it to a negative way because it's just, honestly, it's easier to just sit, not say anything, and assume these negative things than to go through the process of having a conversation that's uncomfortable. You're actively choosing to assume negative things about this person because you're just too uncomfortable to have a conversation with them. And that, I think, is more of a reflection on you wanting to sit in this negative space, wanting to feel like the victim, wanting to, not really have the conversation. But know that you can ask questions and have a meaningful conversation and get clarification. Like there's nothing wrong with doing that. And it's all about how you present it, your tone, and your demeanor in it too. You can approach a conversation with a bunch of attitude, emotion, and just negative energy, but nothing good is going to come of that. I've done that so many times, and I obviously see the reaction I get from whoever I'm conversing with. So I've learned to be mindful of my tone, my body language, especially in those conversations, and just approaching it with the mindset of kindness and love. To recap on improving your self-awareness in specifically through uncomfortable conversations is to let go of the idea or let go of the need to be right. Let go of the idea that you know everything. Approach with curiosity. Assume that the other party is coming from a space of kindness, and to be mindful of your tone, your body language, your presence, because that will affect the trajectory of your conversation. So I hope this helps. I also want to hear your experiences, what has helped you in those uncomfortable conversations, what has helped improve your self-awareness in those uncomfortable conversations, because like I said, I'm a student for life. I love learning, and I'm sure anybody on this platform or anyone within the hard pressed space wants to learn more. So definitely share in comments, send me an email, hardpressedpodcast@gmail.com. All feedback is welcome here. If you made it this far, thanks so much for sticking through, and have a good week. Bye.